what we're going to do today is to go through some of the at the highest level, because nothing's been confirmed yet, the labour changes that are proposed. Labour changes, doesn't matter whether it's Labour or Conservative. These are the changes that are going to be proposed, and we'll all have to deal with them, as we all do. We don't get a choice, really. And talk through them. What I would say is that although the government has already announced that one thing is the uplift, I can't remember what the uplift was for, but they have introduced one already with immediate effect that will be put into law in October. They haven't announced any dates for the other changes. Now, the way it works in employment law is that you would normally have to consult with the employer associations, and CIPD, our professional body, to work out the exact wording of anything. So it might be coming in, some of it might be coming in next April, but it's much more likely that there's going to be stuff coming in next October. So don't panic that we're going to have to do it straight away. Obviously, if they change their mind, we'll come back to you, but they've got their summer holiday now, haven't they? School's broken up for their summer holiday. So it's highly unlikely that anything will be in a state to impose before anything new, particularly new. And there's one that Nadia's going to be talking about, the unfair dismissal timeline, that there is going to cause a lot of change. It is a lot of huge amount of change. They cannot just do that, from now to tomorrow. Others are going to be a bit easier. But I'll hand over to Nadia now, and she can go through some of those.
In a spaceship sort of thing.
So we'll start with the big one, which is the proposal to change or to remove the 2-year grace period that you have at this point before an employee can claim unfair dismissal. So what they are looking to bring in is that employees would be able to claim unfair dismissal from day one. Now, it's not necessarily all employees. It is actually what they're suggesting is that employees would be able to claim unfair dismissal following the end of their probation period, actually. So if an employee has a 3 or a 6 month probation period, they would go through the probation process. And that's one of the things we really would need to change, how we do that in terms of how much work you put in the probation period. And then after the probation period, they would then have this right to actually claim unfair dismissal. Some of the work that would need to go into this is that probation periods would need to really be made good use of. So rather than most of us at this point, someone's on probation and it just sort of comes and goes and nobody really notices. And if you are unhappy with someone, you might notice that they're still in their probation or go, shall we extend their probation? But that's about as far as it goes. Whereas if this happens, you would really need to do those kind of like monthly or bi-weekly probation review meetings. You'd need to point out things that need to be improved. You'd need to talk about those changes so that if you have someone that isn't passing probation, you need to have some backup when you let them go. Or if someone is a bit iffy and we'll always say if they're a bit iffy, they're not right. But if they're a bit iffy and you're not sure and you're keeping them on, you need to already have some of those building blocks in place, because you will need to follow a full process then to let these employees go. The same for something as simple as gross misconduct. If you come to us now with a gross misconduct issue for someone under 2 years and they don't have any protected characteristics, we'd likely tell you that you don't need to follow an entire process. And you could just let them go. That will not be something that you'd be able to do in the future. In the future, you would need to follow that 3-step disciplinary process of investigation, disciplinary, and appeal. So again, like Carolyne said, this isn't something that's easy to bring in or a quick change. We are expecting it really from next October onwards. We don't necessarily, I'm not saying never say never, but they need to make some quick work of it to get it in for April. But I think we're more likely looking at next October for this one. The same for the next one that I'm going to talk to you about. I also think that this is a fairly big change that might have a bit of a financial impact on our clients or on employers in the UK. And therefore, I think this one also probably will need some negotiation, and there might be some pushback and toing and froing before decisions are made about this one. So this is the right to bereavement leave for all employees. So at the moment, you know, if you have our contracts, which most of you do, then your bereavement leave is potentially paid at 1 or 2. I've seen some of our contracts where clients have it up to 5 or 7 days of paid bereavement leave, or compassionate leave, as the contract calls it. This is something that they are looking to increase to 6 weeks fully paid for, yes, Eddie, that was my expression as well. 6 weeks fully paid for all employees, for a family member, a partner, or a spouse. And hold on to your seat, Eddie, 4 weeks for a friend. So this is something that I think probably will get quite a lot of pushback. I don't see them being able to bring those high levels in. I think they'll probably end up with something along 2 weeks of compassionate leave or something like that. But the initial proposal is for 6 weeks fully paid for a family member or a partner or a spouse, and 4 weeks for a friend. They'd be able to take it in one go or in 2 blocks, but it must be used within 2 months of the person passing away. So again, this one is probably not one that's going to hit you soon, and we'll keep you up to date with any changes. Now I'll get Amy to talk to you about a couple of others.
So I'm going to talk to you about 2 other points. So we're going to start with one of our favourite topics, which
Can I just ask a couple of questions before we move on?
Yeah, of course you can, Melanie. Go for it.
All right, because it's with reference to Nadia. The probation, can I just confirm that the probation day 1 is planning to be day 1 after the current 6-month probation? So they have to complete the 6 months, and then the day 1 is then not their first day of employment, but the first day that they are out. So 6 months and 1 day will become their first day where they can take us from first.
It's looking like that now, Mel. It's looking like that's what they're suggesting. So as is proper with politics, they would have made it look a tiny bit better, or a lot better than it's actually going to be. So they would have called it day 1, right? But actually, yes, if you look into it a little bit and read into it, what they're actually suggesting is that following the probation period. However, that doesn't mean we can now make our probation periods 12 months, because that would be unreasonable. So, you know, if you were thinking about that trick, we've thought about that one already.
Yeah. My second question is family. What are they categorising as family? Because historically, I think it's next of kin for bereavement or compassionate leave.
So they're not categorising family member at the moment, but the fact that they have put family member, spouse, or partner tells me that as a family member, they are probably going to be talking about parents, siblings, grandparents, possibly uncles and aunts.
Okay. We're all going to be bankrupt then, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If they can get this through, Mel, but they're not going to get that through. That's a lot, from nothing to 6 weeks fully paid.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll see. Okay.
I'm going to say that it's all very well saying we're not going to get it through. They have a majority. They can just vote on it, and then it's law. So all we're doing is saying this might come in. They're not stupid. They will choose their battles. They will choose which one of these is going to be the most important one for them to get through. Some of them will be really easy and straightforward. Others are going to be obviously like the bereavement leave. And I'm going to say bereavement leave, 6 weeks bereavement leave for an immediate family member is less scary because that is a major event than the second one that Nadia mentioned, which is 4 weeks for a friend. And I'm like, well, you just have to say when they join you, write down the friend names that you're going to be really upset about if they die before you leave us. And then you can have it. Otherwise, I can imagine people say, "Oh, my friend's died," and they're off for 6 months full pay. It's like, how many friends are you allowed to have die in a year? What's the what is that? That is the one, because that's so less clearly defined. You can tell whether somebody's run out of family members, if you see what I mean, but you can't tell if somebody's got friends who keep dying, or and it is horrible. It is horrible because there will be people who genuinely do need that time. And other people are just going to take advantage of it. So there you go. Amy.
So I'm going to talk to you about statutory sick pay. So they are proposing that statutory sick pay will be paid from day one of sickness, as opposed to currently we have the 3 waiting days. And their justification for this is that the waiting period discourages people for taking the time off that they need to recover from sickness. Obviously, the flip side that we potentially are going to see from this is going to be an increase of absenteeism and people just taking advantage of being paid from day one of their sickness. The next one I'm going to talk to you is about introducing the right to switch off from work. So workers will have the right to disconnect from work and not be contacted by their employer outside of working hours. Now, I'm sure we'd all love that in practice, but it's not necessarily something that is going to be feasible. However, this has actually just been introduced in Australia and brought into law. So go on, Caroline.
I'd just like to say that the way that was said is like, in our office, we have the right to disconnect. Nobody works past 5 o'clock except for me, and nobody works at weekends apart from me. I'd just like to say it's not that I'm, a hard taskmaster in making them work all days, hours and days. I just wanted to put that on record that I'm a nice person and I don't make them work after 5 o'clock. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
She doesn't work me to the bone, everyone. Please don't fear for me. So yeah, like I said, this has been introduced already in Australia. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is put into practice and how this will work in practice. I'm not really sure how they're going to be able to actually monitor this moving forward. So we will see what happens with that one.
Just before we take questions on that, I was writing an article on the SSP changes. Actually, it's going to come out next week. That actually the trade union Congress are very much in obviously want the sick pay, because actually it is indirectly sexual gender discrimination, because 67% of the people who are only off for 1, 2 or 3 days, not the full consecutive days, are females. And because they've got the statistics on this, because you log it as SSP, that goes through to HMRC. Even if we're not getting the money back, it still gets logged. So they can tell that actually it is indirectly sex discrimination the way it is at the moment, that it's not paid from day one. Now, the thing is, it's only going to be paid. And this is where we get into the fun thing, is how do you define who gets it? Because at the moment, one is paid from day one, but also day one of absence. Okay. But currently you have that you only qualify for SSP if you earn over the lower earnings limit on your average weekly basis, and it should really be over 8 weeks. Okay. Is that going to change? Is it going to be from everybody who earns whatever amount they earn? Okay. Which immediately brings up, well, what if I only have them for 4 hours a week because they're doing shift work? Then it's going to be better for them to be off sick on SSP because they get paid more for that than if they were actually working. And this is why we're saying none of this is going to come in particularly quickly, because it's that detail behind the scenes that they've got to work out. Is that they're not going to have a low earnings limit, because that is quite high, and there are a lot of 0 hours workers who therefore wouldn't get it but still are doing work. But are they going to do it from zero, £5 pence, £5 pence? God, I need more chocolate, more coffee. Is it going to be from minimum wage? As long as they have to earn minimum wage, and if you earn 2 hours a week for that, you do it. Is the actual amount paid out in SSP pro rata the amount you're earning? I mean, that sounds a bit complicated, but it's all in the system anyway. So yeah, maybe they're going to do something like that, but we don't know. Are there any questions? that's impressive. No questions at all. Excellent. Good. Okay, so moving on.
Eddie has a question. You just got to take yourself off mute.
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me? I was expecting to hear you mention 0 hours contracts. Have I missed something in recent months? Because I would have thought with the new Labour government, they've been so anti-0 hours contracts for so long, and yet the hospitality industry is absolutely dependent upon them. And I think in golf clubs, we're no different. Any news or thoughts on those?
Yes. So what they've said is they are against exploitative 0 hours contracts. And again, they haven't defined what that is. I'm going to say, to me, exploitative is what Sports Direct used to do, that we can't guarantee you anything. You have no right to anything. You're also got to wait until we call you. You're not allowed to go and work for anybody else. And that was seen as exploitative. They are proposing that if you are on a 0 hours contract, and this is similar to what happens with agency workers now, but a lot of people we work with don't have agency workers, so you wouldn't be aware of it, is that after 12 weeks on a 0 hours contract, if you could request to have a part-time contract if your hours are regular within that 12 weeks. So that is, I think I would see that as more likely. I think they will. There will be employers out there who are using exploitative contracts and not doing it the right way. I think it's more going to affect you. That I think it's more likely they're going to bring in that right to ask for a part-time contract.
Okay.
After 12 weeks. I'm going to say up until recently, so the last 2 years, we've had a ruling on holidays regarding 0 hours, which meant it was much better for all clients in hospitality to actually have part-time workers and not 0 hours workers. But that was overturned at the beginning of this year and is coming in. It depends on holiday years. It's just they make it so unnecessarily complicated, but that it's actually back to the 12.07% that you pay them for their holiday pay every month. So it's a lot easier now. There's no reason to particularly go away from 0 hours. I think, like you said, it would be difficult for them to scrap it entirely. But I think there are also a lot of people, particularly golf clubs, who are possibly not using 0 hours the way they're supposed to be. They're using it as a way to try and pretend it's not a part-time one. Because we do have a lot of clubs that come to us and they say, right, well, they work on average 30 hours a week. Okay, and how long have they done that for? 5 years. Yeah, so that's not really a 0 hours contract then, is it?
No.
So yeah, you've got no advantage then, because if there was any claims, it would be argued that's a part-time contract anyway. So there's no advantage to you to have it on 0 hours because you're never going to be able to implement it. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right. So what was I talking about? Sorry,
can I ask a question? Sorry, Carolyne.
Yeah. Sorry, John. Yeah.
Sorry, you just mentioned there that we've gone back to the 12.07 calculation for 0 hours for holiday pay. Is that right?
Yes.
Because, we were advised that we had to go to something like 9% or something a while ago.
No.
Right.
No, not 9%. So what it was back in October 2019, we've all had fun over the last 4 or 5 years, really, we have. It started off that you would pay 0 hours workers 12.07%. You times the hours by 12.07%, and that would give you the number of hours that were holiday pay, and you would pay them out at their normal hourly rate. Okay. Yeah. In October 2019, they said actually it's going to be the average of the last 3 months working that you're going to use as the basis for calculating their holiday. No 12.07% anymore. Then from April 2020, they said actually it's going to be purely based on a rolling 52 weeks, the average hours that they have over 52 weeks. Okay, so that was a big palaver with spreadsheets and everything. And then at the beginning of 22, I think it was, there was a case law decision saying by a judge who obviously doesn't really know what 0 hours workers are and what the implications were of what he said, that actually all 0 hours workers should have 28 days holiday every year. Of course they should. And everybody went, what? No. Let pro rata. And he's like, no, not pro rata. And everybody had to have 28 days holiday paid at their average daily rate. So then and that daily rate had to be worked back over 52 weeks. So that was the huge palaver we've done. And then at the beginning of this year, they said, actually, that's been overturned. We've decided not to do it anymore. We're back to the 12.07% times their hourly, the hours they've actually worked, which is so much easier.
Was that because of a recognition that it was just more practicable to do it that way, do you think? Or?
Yes, I think finally somebody got through and said, this is just unnecessarily complicated. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Ian.
Okay.
Can I just add, it's not with immediate effect, John. It's from your next calendar year.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely spot on right legally, Mel. Or you could just do it because, they won't object. The 0 hours people won't object because they're just getting paid their holiday. So you're legally, and that's what we've been advising people, it's from the next holiday year. But if you're not, it just sounds you haven't quite been doing it 100% correctly anyway, John. You might as well just go straight to 12.07% now. I wouldn't wait until the next holiday year. That's all. Okay. Good. Okay. So tribunal claims. So they're gonna go through the roof. They are thinking of extending the time period for tribunal claims to 6 months. Currently, it's 3 months plus a month for early conciliation, so 4 months in effect. There is a backlog at the moment at early conciliation because we've had one case come through and I think it took 6 weeks to get to us, which is ridiculous. So there will be more there. It's not sure. I would hope that Keir Starmer, as a barrister, would be investing more money in the court system so that stuff could be heard. It would be really good if they could introduce more stages in the tribunal system, because what we found, there's one thing if there is a genuine case, because some clubs and employers do things wrong, fine, but there are people who start tribunals because there's no cost to it, who don't have 2 years service, and they can't do that if and it's not discrimination, they're just claiming unfair dismissal, and there's no process at the moment for the tribunal to say you don't have the service, therefore your claim is struck out, full stop. It has to go all the way through the process, and the employer has to pay for the legal advice, and that is then a big drain on everybody's resources. And it's like, if there was a way of doing sort of intermediate hearings to see how much evidence anybody has, even for discrimination, what have you got as evidence? Oh, they were always nasty to me. Okay. More specifically, did they call you anything? Oh, I just knew they didn't like me. Well, that's not a case. We can probably strike that out now. Whereas if they come back and say, yes, I've got all this documentation of how they sent me emails, calling me names and blah, 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 absolutely, we're going to go forward. But if it's just, oh, well, I don't think they ever liked me, then there are some people who do that type of case. And they go all the way through. They don't have to appear. There's no sanction against them if they don't appear. They can do time wasting. It's not as many as you'd think, because actually once you get into the tribunal process, it's not a fun process. It's not like on TV. There's not bits of paper going everywhere. The first month there's bits of paper, and then it's silent for like a year. And that's when we get people coming to us and asking for settlement agreements. But the tribunal claim means that we would have to wait for that little bit longer to make sure that there isn't going to be something coming back. And I think that's going to lead to a bigger increase in the use of settlement agreements and COT 3s, which is sort of the equivalent if you do it through early conciliation, to make sure that this issue has gone away and is not going to come back in 6-7 months. Okay. The other one, which we don't have a problem with our clients, but apparently it's a huge issue, is fire and rehire. A lot of people on the internet are saying, oh yeah, like P&O. P&O is not fire and rehire. P&O was fire and hire. So they fired all of their staff, gave them all settlement agreements. Okay. They had obviously worked out that it was cheaper to give them a year's pay each than it was to negotiate with the unions and to deal with long-term sickness where people are getting sort of a year's pay for being off sick and everything. It was cheaper to give every single employee a year's pay, full stop, off you go, than it was to negotiate. So they fired them all, which is, it's not illegal. People were talking about it like, oh, they should be locked up in prison. It's like, no, under employment law, if you do that, you have to give them a year's pay. They gave them a year's pay. That is their fine. That is their sanction against them. And then they went and hired totally new people. There may well have been some of the existing ones, but it wasn't an aim to rehire the same people. And that's what when it says hire and rehire, they're usually thinking that they fired them on one terms and said you can have it back on the different terms. Okay. That might well be the case I don't know, maybe when you've got legacy staff that they do that. I don't think it's going to affect smaller businesses in that way at all. I think maybe things like cleaning contractors might do that, but they're already protected. You've already got minimum wage. You've already got TUPE there. Fire and rehire in those industries was a problem. It's no longer a problem because they can't go below minimum wage anyway, and they're all pretty much on minimum wage. So that's it. Okay. That other thing, which leads nicely into that, they're going to raise the minimum wage to be the same for everybody over the age 18. And that means everybody goes up, not everybody goes down. And that will be an easy one for them to do, to introduce from next April, which is when the annual changes comes in. So I would expect that one definitely, because they're not going to need to consult in any way on that. They just say from 1st of April, everybody over 18 gets not £11.44, which is what it is now. It's going to be a higher bit, I don't know, £12.50 or something an hour. So it's to start looking at those finances, how that's going to impact your wage bill when you're hiring people, and with existing staff still under 2 years, are they worth that amount of money? Some of them will be, absolutely, and some of them won't. But it's just you need to go and start looking at that now and not just be surprised in April, I think. Okay. Any questions at the moment? Tony?
Right. Yeah. In relation to heat of the moment resignations, had a situation last week, Catherine's aware of, where an employee came in, was quite upset and just resigned on the spot. So on the advice, Catherine, I issued a letter to say, was this your sort of true intention? If it was, you've got by 10 o'clock tomorrow to reply. The following morning, the individual came in and apologised, and I took it as it was retracted.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't get an email confirmation of that, but I called a meeting the next morning with all the individuals concerned to sort of thrash it out and see what's gone wrong. Yeah. Which went pretty well at the end of it after over an hour's discussion. Since then, sorry, going back a little bit, the email was delivered, but I didn't get a reply. So I know it was delivered, but the individual came to me to say it wasn't, she hadn't seen it. Now what's the situation, because she hadn't replied? But she came into me verbally to retract it. Yeah. Is that good enough? Because I noted it.
Catherine, are you okay to take that one?
I would say if she's told you she's retracted it, I would take it as retracted because otherwise she could have responded to that email and done the same thing. So I would take that as it was a heat of the moment. She's not actually resigning.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and just quickly on heat of the moment resignations, if they're under 2 years, and there's no sort of protected characteristics or any allegations of bullying or harassment or anything, we tend to accept people who say, I'm not working here, and storming out. We tend to try and accept those ones. If they're over 2 years, or if there are things have been raised around bullying or sexual harassment or anything, we absolutely do not let them. We can't stop them from resigning, but we would do it like Tony has. We would definitely go back and say, you were upset. Let's talk about this. We're not going to accept it for the time being, because then you've got the chance you won't have a clean dismissal if it's a heat of the moment resignation. If you just keep going ahead and say, oh yes, of course, bye-bye, that's the thing. Yeah. But the other thing, sorry, with resignations is as well, don't let people extend their resignation period. We had a client who had somebody who gave them their month's notice and then said, oh, actually, haven't quite got another job yet, so can I stay for another month, and then another month, and then at the end of that claimed that they hadn't ever resigned in the first place. And it's like, okay, if they just do the month and then they're off, thank you, don't extend it, because it just gets really messy again.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Has anybody got any other questions about Labour? Okay. I say Labour, new government. There will be new things coming out. I'm sure there will. They are supposed to be working. I know the side was a bit facetious about the summer holidays for Parliament, but they will be doing some work because they are new to governing this lot. And there will be probably stuff starting in September. So I think that's when we need to be looking at it, September, October. And as soon as anything does get announced, we will go into all the details and we'll do it on the weekly Zoom. And we'll be sending out an update as well.
Yeah. Can I just come in with one thing very quickly? Am I on?
Yes, Eddie. Yeah.
Really, Nadia spotted my reaction to the bereavement thing right at the front. And every single employer in the country will be praying that common sense prevails. You can imagine in a golf club, if there's a workplace accident causing a death of a greenkeeper and your green staff decide they're all going to take 6 weeks, we'll be out of business within a week.
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to be cutting the grass. It's finished, and small businesses in the high street, but it's bonkers.
It is. It's a really big change. And honestly, I had the same reaction you had when I read it, because I sort of expected it to be a week or two. I didn't expect it to be 6 weeks and 4 weeks. And I was like, whoa, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be in HR in my working life, and long-term bereavements. I mean, let's be fair, there are people who seriously suffered close relatives, and goodness knows how the people in Southport are. And it was a case really after a few days of compassionate leave, then a case of getting a certificate from your doctor, you're not fit to come to work, and you were signed off through sickness, and that goes on as long as the doctor considers you need to stay off. But this charter, bloody hell, excuse me.
Well, I mean, they might do that. They're going to do it like they do. There are, for companies that have 250 employees or more, there are, for example, more reporting requirements about gender pay, equality and everything like that. They may say for all employers of over 50 people or of over 100, or even the 250, if they actually it's 6 weeks and 4 weeks, everybody under that, it's maybe 1 week or 2 weeks. So that, again, they might do that distinction, because once they start doing the consultation on it, people are going to point out this is never going to work for a small business. That's the thing. Yeah. So good. Okay. Well, everybody have a lovely weekend. I don't think it's supposed to be quite as hot as today, but it's supposed to be decent weather. And we'll see you all here next week. Everybody, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want a free tribunal audit of your employment contract and handbook, click the link in the description below.